Last Thanksgiving, I was back at my grandma's house. I just turned 32 and needed a place to stay after losing my job as a graphic designer. I thought cooking with her would be nice. It was a chance to make memories amid family recipes and warmth. I wanted comfort. Little did I know things would get strange. That night I began chopping vegetables. Grandma dozed in her chair, the turkey roasting and filling the air with delicious smells. Everything felt calm at first, but then I thought I heard something. Whispers, maybe. I shook it off, thinking it was just my mind playing tricks. After all, I was stressed. As the days passed, the whispers returned. They were faint at first, but soon they started calling my name. Jamie. I shivered. I wasn't alone in the kitchen. I could feel it. I looked back, expecting to see my grandma waking up, but she just kept snoring. I asked her about it later. She smiled, talking about family recipes. I felt odd asking. I didn't want her to think I was losing it, but the whispers got louder. I tried to focus. I prepped the pie while darkness settled in. I noticed shadows moving in a strange way. They seemed to dance, unlike anything I saw before. The kitchen felt smaller, and my heart raced. I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I thought maybe it's just an old house playing tricks on me. The night before Thanksgiving, I was alone in the dim light. The voices grew stronger, calling my name more urgently. Jamie. It felt wrong. Something was hiding in the past, something I wasn't ready to uncover. Suddenly, I heard my grandmother stirring in the other room. My heart raced faster. I froze, unsure how to explain these voices if I could even make sense of them. Then I heard it clear as day. My grandfather's voice. Jamie. It sent chills up my spine. I twisted around. No one was there, but the shadows felt alive now, shifting and changing shape. I took a deep breath, feeling cold wash over me. I whispered back, "What do you want?" Silence hung in the air. I stood frozen, staring into the dim kitchen. The shadows flickered, and I thought about running, but my feet wouldn't move. I wanted this to stop, yet something inside me was drawn in, curious about what laid beneath the whispers. Just then, my grandma called from the next room. "Are you okay?" I blinked, torn between her voice and the calling from the shadows. My heart raced as I realized how alone I felt. The kitchen grew colder, and all I could hear was the otherworldly whispering, urging me to listen. I didn't know how to make it stop. I hesitated for a moment, caught in the swirl of my fear. I could hear my grandma's voice drifting through the air, but the shadows were growing bolder. "Jamie, please," the voice urged, warmer now, more genuine. I clenched my fists, trying to find a way to resist. I glanced toward the doorway. "I'm fine," I called back, my voice trembling slightly. Grandma didn't seem convinced. I could hear her shuffle, the sound of her slippers against the wooden floor. Panic shot through me. There was something in the kitchen, something that wanted me to stay. Jamie. The shadows shifted, almost weaving together. I took a step back. I had to know. I had to understand. I took a deep breath and whispered, "What do you want?" The answer came as if the air itself had transformed. "Remember," a voice echoed softly, intermingling with the whispers. It was my grandfather's voice, but it was different, layered with emotion. I could feel its pull, urging me to reach into the past. Just then, the room shuddered as the lights flickered overhead. The air grew thick and dread seeped into my bones. "Jamie, please come here." My grandma's voice grew sharper, confused. I could hear the worry creeping into her tone. I needed to decide. I spun around and called out, "Are you okay, Grandma?" The whispers intensified, surrounding me, drowning out her reply. Everything felt distorted, like the kitchen itself was a cell, keeping me trapped in its eerie grasp. "Hurry," the voice whispered again, more insistent this time. It sent a shiver down my spine. I took a step forward, drawn by a strange mix of fear and longing. "Who are you?" I whispered into the darkness. In that moment, I noticed something out of the corner of my eye. It was a small object on the counter, partially obscured by shadows. It glinted as it caught the light. Curious despite my fear, I moved closer. My heart raced as I reached for it. That's when I saw it. A faded photo torn at the edges. The faces looked familiar, but there was something off about them. I grabbed it, holding it close. Instantly, a rush of cold air swept through the kitchen, dropping the temperature to chilling depths. My breath became visible, swirling in the air. I can't explain what happened next. The photo slipped from my fingers after I noticed a name written on the back, a name I hadn't heard in years. My heart sank. Who was in that picture? I glanced back toward my grandma, who seemed to have fallen silent. The shadows danced wildly, and fear began to spiral within me. I had to get out of here. I stepped toward the doorway, but before I could move, the kitchen door slammed shut. I was trapped. The whispers surged into a cacophony, wrapping around me like a net. "Jamie!" they called again, more deafening this time. I couldn't breathe. I felt a presence near me, cold and dark. Suddenly the lights went out completely, plunging me into darkness. I could hear nothing but my own breath, quick and panicked. I was not alone anymore, and this time the shadows were closing in. The darkness was suffocating, wrapping around me like a thick blanket. I could still hear the whispers, but they had morphed into a cruel chorus. They taunted me, drawing closer. "Jamie." I stumbled backward, heart racing. My fingers brushed against the cool surface of the counter. I needed to find a way out, but my mind was racing too fast to think clearly. "Grandma!" I shouted, hoping she would respond, but only silence answered. In that moment, my hand found the handle of the kitchen door, stuck like it had a mind of its own. I pulled harder, but it wouldn't budge. Panic coursed through me. What was happening? Then I remembered the photo. Was it the reason for all this? I turned, searching frantically for it in the dark. My fingers grazed over the counter, down to the floor. I needed to find it and see the name again. Was it a clue to my grandpa? Or something more? Just as I spotted the glimmer of the photo, another presence swept through the kitchen. It felt like an icy breath against my neck. I froze, every hair on my body standing on end. "Who's there?" I managed to whisper, gripping the edge of the counter. The air crackled, charged with something unseen. I squinted into the black, trying to make out shapes, but then, in a surge of clarity, the shadows began to pull back, like curtains being drawn. I could see figures, blurry at first, taking form around me. They weren't just shadows, they were faces. Some looked familiar. Grandparents, long gone. But there was a darkness behind their eyes. I fought the urge to scream, but found my voice trapped within my throat. "Why are you here?" I choked out. "You've forgotten," one figure hissed, and I felt a gust of wind swirl around me, lifting hair from my face. "You're meant to remember." Suddenly, a set of heavy footsteps echoed outside the door. In a flash, the shadows recoiled, hissing softly in unrest. I looked back at the door, heart hammering. They seemed afraid of what was outside. The footsteps faded, almost as if the potential arrival of someone, my savior or my doom, sent them into a deeper frenzy. Hesitating, I took a step closer to the door again. "Grandma?" I called out. My voice felt small, all but swallowed by the returning whispers. "Please help me." But the shadows surged forward, swirling around me like a dark storm. I felt their cold touch once again, wrapping tight. "Find us, remember," they begged, their voices mingling with my own racing thoughts. And in that moment of desperation, I caught sight of the photo again. It lay just within reach. I lunged for it and snatched it up, holding it tightly like a lifeline. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, gripping the photo as if it could shield me. The shadows froze. Then I heard a shattering sound, a glass breaking, followed by footsteps rushing toward the kitchen. I braced for what would come next, ready to confront the unknown. Would anyone step in to save me, or would the shadows pull me under? The sound of breaking glass sent a jolt of fear through me. My heart pounded in my chest, and I stood frozen, clutching the photo as if it were my only defense. The darkness felt alive, pulsating like a heartbeat, pressing against my skin. I held my breath, waiting for something to come through that door. The footsteps grew louder, echoing against the wooden floor. They were heavy, deliberate. A bolt of hope shot through me. Maybe it was my grandma. But then a chilling thought crept in. If it wasn't her, who or what was coming? "Jamie?" a voice called, and it wasn't my grandma's. The tone was low and slightly raspy. "Jamie, are you in there?" I wanted to answer, to reassure whoever it was that I was close by. But the shadows tightened their grip and I couldn't make a sound. I still felt the shadows' cold whispers, urging me to remember, to reclaim what I had lost. Without thinking, I reached for the door handle, the metal cold against my palm. I twisted it with all my might, but it still wouldn't budge. The whispers rose again, louder now, drowning out the voice outside. "Help us. Find us. Before it's too late." "Jamie," the voice called again, sharper this time. "Open the door." A feeling of urgency pulsed through me. I glanced down at the photo, now creased and crumpled in my fist. The name written on the back, my grandpa's name, seemed to glow under the dim light. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was what I needed. I turned the photo over, but the shadows whirled around it, darkening my sight. I concentrated, blocking out the chaos. "What do you want me to remember?" I whispered, feeling a surge of determination. "Show me." Suddenly the darkness erupted. A figure emerged from the haze. A tall man with familiar features but shadowy eyes. It was my grandpa. His mouth moved, but the words were lost in the turbulence surrounding him. Then there was a loud crash at the door, as if someone was trying to force it open. Trembling, I glanced back to see the doorknob rattling violently. The voice outside grew more frantic. "Let me in." "Okay, okay," I shouted, still gripping the photo. "I'm trying." With a surge of adrenaline, I slammed my shoulder against the door, but it felt like a wall of fog standing in my way. The man in the shadows pointed urgently, and I could feel my breathing quicken. I didn't know what he wanted, but the urgency pressed against me. "Remember the truth," he mouthed silently, and suddenly clarity hit me. Shards of my past flooded my mind. A Thanksgiving dinner last year, the laughter, the warmth, and then there was a scream. I hadn't thought about it in so long. Just then the door burst open and a figure rushed inside. I whipped around, heart racing, ready to fight or flee. But it wasn't my grandma. It was someone else, someone tall and looming, with wild eyes and a dark grin. "Gotcha," he said, and the shadows surged. I gasped, panic surging through me. I glanced back at the figure of my grandpa who was fading into the darkness. I had to make a choice. Did I stay and face this new threat, or did I grasp for the truth in the shadows? My destiny felt impossibly close, yet just out of reach. The figure loomed closer, and I felt the weight of his gaze piercing through the darkness. My heart thudded loudly, each beat echoing my rising fear. "What do you want?" I demanded, trying to sound brave, but it came out more like a whimper. The man tilted his head, a twisted smile curling his lips. "You already know," he replied, his voice dripping with menace. "You've just forgotten." The shadows around him thickened, as if they were alive, crawling toward me. I barely registered what he said. My mind was still racing back to that Thanksgiving dinner. The warmth had been all-consuming, the laughter infectious until it shattered. My grip on the photo tightened, and I looked back to where my grandpa had stood. But now he was gone, swallowed by the darkness that filled the room. The man's presence felt like a noose tightening around my throat, and panic washed over me. "Stop!" I yelled, desperation spilling into my voice. "Just stop!" He chuckled, a low sound that sent chills down my spine. "You need to remember. You can't escape what happened that night." Suddenly a flicker of clarity broke through the chaos. I remembered the kitchen, the smell of roasted turkey, the sound of clinking glasses, and then the scream that shattered everything. It had felt like it came from nowhere, piercing through the happiness, leaving only confusion and fear in its wake. I darted to the kitchen door, driven by instinct, hoping to uncover the hidden pieces of that night. If I could just get there, maybe everything would make sense. I pushed past the looming figure who didn't try to stop me this time. As I stepped into the kitchen, I was hit by a wave of cold air. The light was on, but it cast strange shadows across the room. I searched frantically, hoping for something, anything, that could help me piece together what had happened. That's when I saw it. A shattered glass lay on the floor, the shards glinting ominously in the light. My breath caught in my throat. It was the same kind of glass that had adorned the table that night. The memory was vivid. I could almost hear the laughter again, followed by that dreadful scream. "Jamie!" The voice from outside the door suddenly broke through my thoughts, but it felt distant, as if traveling through a tunnel. "Please!" I turned back, torn between the two realities. The looming figure from before moved closer, stepping into the light. His wild eyes held something I couldn't quite place. "You're getting too close to the truth," he warned, his grin fading, replaced by something darker. I could feel the weight of his threat, but the urge to remember was stronger. I approached the broken glass, my heart racing as pieces of the past melded with the present. Each shard reflected distorted images of my family, and then it hit me. The scream was my mom's. Just as that realization settled in, the lights flickered and went out, plunging me into darkness. I stumbled back, feeling the air grow thick around me. Panic surged, and I fumbled for a way out, unsure of what shadows awaited or what had just been unleashed. In that darkness I heard whispers again, urgent and frantic. "Help us, find us!" But I didn't know who needed help or what I should do. All I knew was that I had to find a way through this. As the darkness closed in, I felt my way along the walls, searching for the light switch. The whispers grew louder, almost frantic, as if they were echoing my confusion. "Help us! Find us!" I squeezed my eyes shut, trying to drown out the noise. "Who are you?" I shouted, my voice shaky in the pitch-black room. "What do you want from me?" The only response was an unsettling silence, broken only by the rhythm of my breath and the distant drip of water. I could feel a sense of urgency creeping in. Whatever it was that lingered in this place wanted me to find something. But where? I took a deep breath and stepped forward hesitantly. A flash of memory struck me like a bolt of lightning. There had been a door in the kitchen that led to the basement, a place I always avoided. I had heard my parents mention it, but never knew what lay below. "Go to the basement," one of the whispers urged suddenly, more insistent. It wasn't just noise anymore. It felt like a command. I stumbled through the room, grasping at the air, and then I found the doorknob. I twisted it and pushed the door open, surprised it wasn't locked. An icy draft rushed over me from the stairway, tugging at me to enter. I hesitated. The idea of descending into the darkness was terrifying. The whispers became a chorus. "Help us, find us." They tugged at my heart, filling me with dread and courage at the same time. I had to know what was down there. "Okay," I said to myself, steeling my nerves. "Just do it." I flicked on the flashlight from my pocket and stepped onto the first stair. The creaking sound echoed ominously. Each step felt heavier than the last, and my heart raced as visions of what I might find played in my mind. Shadows danced on the walls, warping with every shift of the light. At the bottom, the basement was larger than I expected. It felt colder, darker, like a void filled with waiting secrets. I scanned the room and noticed an old trunk in the corner, covered with dust. Its presence made my heart pound even faster. Just as I moved toward it, a sudden crash echoed from the other side of the basement. I froze, my heart pounding like a drum. Someone, or something, was down here with me. I swung the light around, illuminating the dark corners, but still, nothing stirred. The whispers continued to echo, but they had shifted to a low murmur, almost like a chant. "Find us." My pulse quickened. It felt as though I were being watched. I aimed the flashlight at the trunk, feeling a pull, an undeniable urge to see what it contained. There had to be answers inside. But even as I approached, the air thickened with dread, a warning that something was off. I knelt beside the trunk and reached for the latch. Just as my fingers brushed against it, a chilling laugh reverberated through the room. I jumped back, my breath caught in my throat. That laugh, the same twisted sound I had heard before. I stood frozen, heart racing as I processed what this moment meant. "I have to open it," I said slowly, conviction rising inside me. But was I ready for what lay inside? Would it be salvation or another nightmare? I took a deep breath, gathered my courage, and pulled the latch open. The lid creaked, revealing a glimpse of darkness that pulsed with an energy I couldn't understand. Whatever waited for me was something I couldn't turn away from now. I needed the truth, even if it led me to the shadows. The lid of the trunk swung open, and I was hit by a wave of musty air that smelled of decay and forgotten memories. My flashlight flickered, revealing a jumble of items inside: clothes, old toys, and a few frayed photographs. Each item seemed to resonate with the whispers surrounding me. I reached in cautiously, my fingers brushing against a tattered stuffed animal, its glassy eyes staring blankly at me. Just then, the air around me shifted. A coldness seeped into my bones, and the whispers grew loud, now filled with urgency. "Look closer," they cried. This was no simple box of keepsakes. I could feel each heartbeat echoing through the basement, like a drum urging me on. I turned my attention back to the trunk. Among the debris, something glimmered, a small silver locket. I slid it out, and as I held it, the whispers quieted, focusing into a singular voice. "Open it," it said, a gentle coaxing that sent shivers down my spine. My hands trembled as I unlatched the locket. The moment I opened it, a photograph slipped out and fluttered to the ground. I knelt to pick it up, feeling the weight of the moment. It was black and white, faded with time, but I recognized the faces instantly. It was my family, my mom, dad, and me, smiling around a Thanksgiving dinner table, the very same table that now felt so distant. But in the background, there was something else. A shadowy figure loomed, its features indistinct but the outline unmistakable. Panic shot through me. "Who is that?" I whispered, the words barely leaving my lips before the laughter returned, echoing through the basement. It was closer this time, reverberating off the walls, causing the shadows to slither menacingly. I stumbled back from the trunk, the locket still clutched in my hand. I wanted to bolt, to escape, but my feet felt glued to the floor. The darkness around me began to swirl, forming shapes that pulsed in and out of focus. I could almost make out whispering faces within the shadows. "Help us!" they cried again, the urgency increasing. "You need to listen!" "What do you want?" I shouted into the void, desperate for a response. The whispers fell silent, and for a moment everything felt still. Then, as if on cue, a door creaked open somewhere in the basement, a door I hadn't noticed before. My heart raced again. The laughter had taken on a new tone, one that felt inviting yet terrifying. The door was ajar, revealing a faint light that flickered like a beacon in the darkness. I glanced back at the trunk. The locket felt warm in my hand, pulsating with an energy of its own. The door beckoned me forward, and I felt that familiar pull again. I had to find out what lay beyond that door. It couldn't be worse than what I had just faced. I took a deep breath and took a tentative step toward it, ready to confront whatever was waiting for me. But as I reached for the handle, the basement lights flickered and then went out completely, engulfing me in darkness once more. The whispers returned, now layered with impatience, sounding almost desperate. "You have to hurry." Just then, I felt a cold hand grasp my wrist tightly, sending my heart into a frenzy. That was all it took to send me crashing through the door, into an even darker unknown. I stumbled through the door and felt a rush of cold air wrap around me. The darkness closed in, swallowing my senses. I blinked, trying to adjust to the pitch-black surroundings. Every nerve in my body screamed for light, for something familiar to ground me. My heart thudded painfully in my chest. I took a cautious step forward, dragging my hand along the wall for support. It felt rough and damp. That's when I noticed a faint glow ahead. It flickered like a candle, pulling me deeper into the unknown. My mind raced with questions. Where was I? What had I interrupted? I moved closer to the light, and the shadows seemed to retreat, whispering in low murmurs. "You must hear," they urged, barely audible. My palms were clammy, and a chill crept up my spine. As I reached the glowing source, I found an old lantern hanging from a rickety shelf, flickering candlelight casting eerie shadows across the walls. The space around the lantern looked like a small room, cluttered with all sorts of forgotten objects, dusty books, broken furniture, and what looked like old cooking appliances. It smelled of burnt wood and old spices mixed together. Suddenly I felt a presence behind me. I spun around, ready to flee, but the only thing greeting me was the unsettling echo of my own breath. I inhaled sharply, trying to calm my racing thoughts. "Get a grip," I muttered to myself. Just then, a faint sound broke through the silence, a soft humming. It was a tune I couldn't quite place, yet it felt oddly familiar. It tugged at my heart, drawing me closer. I went further into the room, following the haunting melody. It led me to a small wooden table. On it lay another photograph, one I hadn't noticed before. I picked it up, heart racing. It was another family picture, this time taken in the same dimly lit kitchen as now. My family looked happy. The table was full of food, but in the corner of the photograph was that same shadowy figure. It grinned menacingly, and I could feel its eyes boring into my soul. Panic surged. "No, no, no!" My voice echoed around me. I dropped the picture, and it shattered against the floor, glass scattering like my frayed nerves. I stumbled back, and that's when I saw it, directly across the room. A tall, dark shape emerged from the far corner, cloaked in shadows. It had a grotesque grin, one that mirrored the figure in the photograph. My throat tightened, and the candlelight flickered violently, casting wild shapes on the walls. The humming rose in intensity, now filled with a frantic energy. I turned to flee back through the door, but it slammed shut with a resounding thud, sealing me in. "Let me go!" I screamed, banging on the door, but it wouldn't budge. The whispers grew into a cacophony. "Listen," they insisted. Frantically, I glanced around for another way out, feeling trapped, helpless. Then my eyes landed on the trunk. Somehow it had been dragged into the room with me. The lid cracked open. The glowing locket lay atop a stack of clothes, gleaming in the dim light. I felt the urge to reach for it again. Maybe it held the answers I needed. With no time to waste, I shuffled toward it, but the figure in the corner shifted, moving closer, and everything inside me screamed to run. Then it spoke. "You cannot leave until you understand." That one chilling statement froze me in place, and in that moment, I knew I had to confront my fears if I wanted to escape this cursed place. The locket called to me, more than just an object. It held the truth that could free me. I just had to find the courage to face what lay beneath the surface. I took a breath, trying to steady my trembling hands. The locket seemed to pulse with energy, almost inviting me to discover its secrets. But that dark figure loomed closer, the grin widening in a way that sent shivers down my spine. My instincts screamed to run, yet I was rooted in place, a paradox of fear and curiosity. "Understand what?" I whispered, my voice trembling as I shot a glance at the shadow. "What do you mean?" It didn't answer. Instead, it stepped into the flickering lantern light, and I could see a more defined shape, a face that looked eerily familiar, twisting into something grotesque. It was as if I were staring into a distorted reflection of someone I once knew. "Who are you?" I demanded, my throat dry. "What do you want from me?" The figure leaned closer, and suddenly the humming stopped. The silence clung to the air like a dense fog. I felt the walls pressing in, suffocating me. "You must remember," it finally hissed, dropping the ghostly tone. "You must remember what happened during that dinner." Thanksgiving dinner. The thought struck like a bolt. Memories rushed in, laughter around the table, the smells of roasted turkey and mashed potatoes, but then shadows flickering, strange murmurs drifting through the kitchen. I had locked that away, hadn't I? "Forget it," I mumbled, shaking my head. That was just... Was it? Or was it a sign? The figure leaned back, letting my confusion swirl in the air. "You dismissed it then, but now it all begins again." I felt a wave of nausea. What does that even mean? The locket almost vibrated in my pocket, urging me to pull it out again. I glanced at the trunk, wondering if it could unlock everything. With a shaky breath, I moved towards it, and my fingers brushed against the smooth surface of the locket. Cool and inviting, it seemed to thrum with a pulse of its own. I yanked it free, the chain clanking softly. The glow brightened, illuminating the room more clearly now. Time to confront the truth, I murmured to myself. My heart raced as I realized how pivotal this moment was. I couldn't just stand there, frozen in fear. But before I could act, the figure lunged forward, darting toward me with an unsettling speed. "You mustn't. Understanding will trap you." Startled, I instinctively stumbled back, raising the locket as if it were a shield. But something peculiar happened. The figure halted in its tracks, eyes darting as if caught in a web of unseen force. "What is this?" it hissed, confusion masking its menacing face. "You cannot wield that." I felt a surge of determination. "Watch me," I defied, clutching the locket tightly. The dread lifted slightly, revealing a way forward. With a breath filled with steely resolve, I pressed the locket against my chest, closed my eyes, and focused on the voices from last year's dinner. The very moment that had started this twisted spiral. Suddenly memories burst forth, vivid and consuming. I could see the faces of my family reflected in the kitchen, hear the joy sparking in the air. Then the murmurs, lurking like shadows, settled over the laughter. I gasped as realization dawned. The figure was intertwined with that night, bound to the secrets I had pushed aside. As the images played out, flickers of recognition cracked through the intense fear surrounding me. What had I hidden away? What did it mean? Just as I thought I could piece it all together, the figure lunged forward again. "You play with fire!" And then everything went dark. When the darkness descended, I thought it was the end. But suddenly I felt warmth flooding back into the void, a sensation that pulled me from my cold, endless panic. It was as if a string connecting me to the world was being tugged, a lifeline in an ocean of despair. A moment later I found myself back in the kitchen, the familiar scent of turkey and spices enveloping me, like a comforting embrace. The room was bathed in soft light, and though I was disoriented, the quiet was reassuring. It felt normal, yet strange. I looked around, disbelieving. Grandma was bustling about, humming softly, seemingly unaware of the chaos I had just endured. The shadows that had been closing in on me were gone, chasing off into the recesses of a fading dream. Heart-thumping, I reached for her shoulder. "Grandma?" She turned, her warm smile greeting me. "There you are, Jamie. I was just about to call you for help." Her eyes twinkled, and I felt an overwhelming wave of relief wash over me. "What was that noise anyway? I thought I heard a crash." I hesitated, the memories swirling in my mind of darkness, whispers, and a figure that demanded the truth. I'm not sure. Just a little distracted, I guess." "Distracted by the turkey?" she teased, pulling me into a quick hug before returning to her work. "Come help me with the gravy." Despite her comforting presence, my pulse still raced. I glanced down, my hand instinctively gripping the silver locket, now cold against my palm. The air still felt thick, stuck with the remnants of the shadows that had haunted me, remnants whispering to me even now. Pushing the memories aside, I focused on the present, on the love filling the kitchen. I joined Grandma at the counter, stirring the gravy while she recounted a story about my grandfather. But my thoughts flitted back to that basement, the darkness, the figure cloaked in shadows. Had I imagined it all? I wanted to believe I had, but the sensations felt too real. Suddenly I wondered about the photo, the shadowy figure I had seen at the periphery of so many moments. "Grandma, do you have a picture of the family from last Thanksgiving?" She looked at me quizzically but nodded, walking over to a drawer. "Of course." As she rummaged through it, anticipation bubbled in my gut. What if it was there, illuminated by the light of an answering memory? She turned back, holding a photograph, and I squinted at the faces, quickly finding myself in the frame. Wider smiles, laughter freezing in time. But in the corner, looming like a shadow, was the shape again, unmistakable and sinister. "Grandma, who is that?" My voice caught in my throat. The smile faded from her lips, replaced by a shadow of concern. "Oh, sweetie." I felt the walls of reality shake and the whispers flared up with urgency. "You have to listen," they echoed, but I had to know. "Just be careful," she said, her face faltering as she placed the picture down gently. "Sometimes things can be better left undiscovered." I froze, staring at the image. My heart sank. Hadn't I already uncovered so much? Yet in that moment, uncertainty clawed at me. I was alive, yes, but was I free? Would I ever understand what truly happened that night? Or would those secrets remain tangled in the shadows of my family's past? Deep down, I knew I would never forget. The whispers still echoed in my mind, although now they were softer, uncertain. I wanted answers, but perhaps the truth was meant to linger like a ghost. Shaking off the thought, I turned back to Grandma as she resumed talking about the meal, grounding myself in the here and now. I moved forward, toward the future while grappling with the shadows that still loomed behind me. Would I ever really escape? Only time would tell, and for now, all that mattered was the warmth surrounding me. But in the back of my mind, the question remained. Who was that figure, and would it come back again?